Zachary Bush. Here's my name, student ID, course ID, and date up top. As you can see, the date is June 12th, 2023, and this is my video on carbohydrate fermentation. So first off, I want to start by kind of talking about the entire experiment and going over what went right, what I think went wrong, if any accidents happened in between. The first kind of hiccup that I hit was that there was a slow leak in one of the vials that caused it to be only like halfway full, and that was a big problem. I wasn't sure how well the fermentation would actually occur with such a low amount of broth in there, and whether it would change the color to a point where I wouldn't be able to tell what the results actually were. So that was problem number one. Problem number two was totally self-inflicted. When I was trying to move around, I set one of my vials down, and as I was moving around it, I accidentally tipped it over, and some of the broth spilled out. It wasn't a large amount, not really too much to be that noticeable, but it is an accident, and it's something that I probably should report and talk about. I don't think it had any impact on the experiment itself, but again, just kind of going over the experiment as a whole and how it went. I let the broth sit for 24 hours, and I put bottles in the incubation area with it to kind of keep it warm and make sure that the fermentation process occurred, and that I wouldn't show up with just blanks, right? There wouldn't be anything to mess up, I guess. There wouldn't be something, okay, I don't have anything to show for this vial. I wanted to make sure I definitely had a sample and something to show. Now, with all that being said, let me kind of jump into it. Right here, we've got SE with glucose. As you can see, it's orange. And when I'm looking over here, it's just because that's where I can see what the camera's seeing. And as you can see, it's orange. The orange indicates that it's a fermenter, which means that it is that in this case, it's a bacteria. The bacteria is interacting the with the carbohydrate and is fermenting. So it's having action with that carbohydrate. Next is the yeast in glucose, and as you can see, it's yellow, which would mean that it is a fermenter with acid and gas production. It's a little more difficult to see on the camera because of how cloudy but there's the tube in here, the Durham tube, and it almost looks like it's not touching the bottom of the vial. It is. That is all acid and gas that has been forced into the Durham tube to show that it has acid and gas production. I'm trying to kind of angle my finger to really point at it. Trying to do my best here, but hopefully that kind of shows. Moving on to SE and fructose. So here in the fructose, you've got the same result in orange color, which means it is a fermenter. It means the same thing as before with the glucose, just this time it's with a different carbohydrate in fructose. Again, here we have yeast with fructose, and again, same result. Got fermenter with acid and gas production. And moving on to SE with mannitol. Got fermenter, no acid and gas production. And yeast, fermenter, gas and acid production. Okay, now the results I wasn't surprised by, especially with the yeast, given that yeast is used for baking, and if you put yeast in with water or put it in with flour, you can definitely see how it ferments over time, and how you see bubbles pop up, and the fact that fermenter with gas production occurred, I'm not shocked by at all, in the slightest. Totally makes sense to me. The SE, I wasn't really sure it was going to happen. I got fermenter for all three of them. I suppose that makes sense. I don't really have any baseline to back it up on. I don't have any personal experience with the bacteria to say, oh, that doesn't make sense given this, this, and that. Um, so ultimately, I think the experiment kind of went as planned for most of it. I am a little interested in the fact that I didn't get any non-fermenters. Um, I think that would have been interesting, but um, I suppose all three all three of the samples were fermenters. What this can be used for in the real world, it's very useful for differentiating bacteria, very useful for learning more about it, knowing whether an acid, excuse me, not an acid, whether a bacteria or fungus or something of the like can interact with a carbohydrate and how it interacts with that is very useful in understanding the bacteria, identifying it. Oftentimes it can be used for identifying bacteria that's never even been identified yet. It helps us classify that. Um, that's the biggest help that this test has in the real world. And yeah, that's my video. Thank you.